Hi, Crystal here, and I'm going to talk about some percepts from this book entitled Trouble by Rob Henderson, a memoir of foster care, family, and social class. One of the ideas that the author presents is the idea of luxury belief. According to the author, a luxury belief is a belief adopted that are in which the person who believes that belief has little to no cost to that individual, but it costs majorly to the downtrodden. For an example that he uses is that he asked one of his Yale students, fellow students, about monogamy, and that the student responded that she believes that monogamy is becoming more and more obsolete in a growing society. And today, that y'all know that word, having multiple partners, is becoming more and more acceptable. But when he asked her about, well, does she plan to marry and be in a monogamous relationship, she said yes, and that she will also encourage her children to go to that similar path. So that is an example of a luxury belief. Believing in an idea or person that is little to no cost to the person who believes it, but to the downtrodden costs majorly. For her to believe that is no cost to her because she is saying that she will get married, and we all know the statistics of how a child being raised in a two-parent home statistically is more successful. The family unit, the traditional way of family, is more beneficial to the child. So that's an example of a luxury belief. Let me see if I can think of another one that the book talks about. The book also talks about, say, a luxury belief, believing in that the police should be defunded is another example of a luxury belief. And that these beliefs are held by elitists, the 1%. That is something that he noticed coming from a background of poverty, but then transitioning to a different social class, economic and social class, of going to Yale University and seeing the people who grew up in trauma or poverty doesn't have time or the luxury to believe in certain things. What's interesting about this percept is that I was talking to one of my coworkers last week, and shout out to him if he's watching this, about he's a white male, and that he posted a happy event, him, his wife, and some friends he was hanging out with, and his friends, not even him, his friends had a shirt on that said, "I'm white, I own a gun, I eat meat, I'm a heterosexual, how can I offend you today?" or something like that. And that people who saw that post got mad at him for posting that, and it wasn't even on him. He wasn't wearing the shirt or whatever. And that the people who got, interestingly enough, the people who got offended by that were liberal white populists, of the population of white, mostly women or college students or whatever, the liberal class, and that they were offended by that. And he remarked of like, yeah, how can you be, yeah, you're offended, you live in your $400,000 house. And he's absolutely right. Like, people who are actually, say, black, grew up in poverty and all that, say from Texas or whatever, if I saw that shirt, I wouldn't be so offended by it. And you would think that I would. A black, lesbian, grew up poor, would be offended. Now, maybe a person I could probably be offended if I was to go that route because of the intent of the shirt. With that statement, how can I offend you? So the intent of the shirt is to offend, right? But by using what may have been unoffensible categories. Okay, you're white. Okay, you're heterosexual. Like, but that also speaks to white fragility, which is a term by coined by D'Angelo, I think. Some scholar in 2011, and it describes how a lot of white people feel some type of way when encountered with racial dilemmas, arguments, or whatever, that the skin, that whites usually don't have tough skin when it comes to encountering race arguments, and that their response may be to be argumentative or to withdraw from the conversation, or so they were not to engage in that. Well, basically what they're saying, that what I feel that they're saying, I've never read the article a lot, but I did encounter it when I went to UNT. It was a topic that we spoke about, and how I perceive it is that years ago, many moons ago, when black people were encountering such decisive rhetoric, and even it being instituted in their social makeup, they can't get loans for houses, or employment discrimination, health discrimination. We're not even going back to like Jim Crow laws or slavery, which we could, and how tough the skin of a black person had to be to overcome those. Now flip it over to a generation where whites are becoming a minority. That's what I've been hearing. That's what, according to some statistics, I never saw that statistics myself, but I've heard about it, as we all have heard about it, that the decline of the white race with immigration, which is probably why immigration is a big ticket. One of the reasons why it's a big ticket in the political environment, and the not being able to engage in discourse, and that white people now are confronted with racial situations or conversations that necessarily doesn't place them at the superiority that historically they're used to enjoying. So white fragility, where opposed to blacks had to, and they're saying white fragility because they have this easiness to get offended. And speaking of race matters, and the race matters doesn't even include largely into it affecting their social or how they live their daily lives. Like no one is telling white people to get in the back of the bus or things like that. Now, in considering that, I also think that really white fragility is amongst the working class because, and not necessarily, I don't know this, I don't know a lot of rich white people, so I can't speak on this, but I know quite a few who are of the working class. And white fragility is something that I see because they're not, it seems like white people are not used to oppression, are used to not being on top. Even if you are a working class white person and say your next door neighbors are poor black people. So how an argument I feel that a lot of white people may have is that I'm white, well I didn't see no privilege. I grew up poor just like the black person. Where's the privilege, right? Even though there is a social privilege to it, or it was. I think it's changing. Equality and people being judged by the content of the character is a real thing. So R.I.P. Martin Luther King and his I Have a Dream speech. But y'all know I have a white foster mom who I adopted as my foster mom. And she would say, and we talk real candid about relationship, race relations. And she would say that she grew up hearing her uncles and aunties say this, well, at least I'm not black, when speaking of some misfortune in their life. So, oh, maybe they got fired from a job, or at least I'm not something in black. It was other words that came to it, like at least I'm not 18 something in black or something like that. I'll probably talk to my foster mom to get clarification on that. So even though, what I'm saying is, even though the working class whites didn't see their privilege, inherently they knew that on a social economic level that blacks were inferior, and they knew to have that such a term as to say, well, at least I'm not black, blah blah blah. Now, how does this incorporate to the rapperty channel and hip hop culture? Like, how does the luxury belief fit into this narrative, right? And I would like to suggest that it fits because hip hop has adopted some of the luxury beliefs of higher class, higher epsilon, or what it means for that to entail, and to itself carry luxury beliefs. For example, I've heard red pill, blue pill guys say this. I don't know what pill it is, but that's what they're called. Saying, for an example, that Beyonce may encourage her listeners, all the single ladies, da da da. But she herself is married, and when her husband cheated, she chose to stay in the marriage and have a family and to build an empire that they're wonderfully doing. So that's an example of luxury belief. You know, the person who believes it, it's no cost to them whatsoever, but it's that structure is a cost to the downtrodden or the poverty-stricken people of society. Another way we may see that is probably the violence in hip-hop. How an example of this is, I would say, Boozy. I saw Boozy in an interview talking about the beef with Drake and Kendrick Lamar about Drake, a house being shot up, and that he was like, well, what if the kid Adonis got shot? And he's absolutely right. However, that is not the context of his music And from what I understand, he even had a child doing hits for him growing up in his 20s and being of that life, being a thug. So the contradictory nature, we see luxury and beliefs in hip hop, which I think is adopted from the system. The record labels are who produce the music and put out and promote, not produce, but mainly promote the music, are not from the culture who consumes it a lot. So that's all I really wanted to say, is how this book has brought to light a concept called the luxury belief, and that's my take on it and how it relates to hip hop culture. Until next time, see you.